Before she leaves the field, he's like, you can come back to my field any day. This was the groundwork for a mutually beneficial relationship, and Boaz marries Ruth. And the couple, they later conceive a son, and the son is called Obed. And in the big scheme, Obed is listed in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Now that's a really short version of that story. Okay. And at the end of it, Ruth is sitting there, at the end with Obed in her lap, and she has women of the community come around her and call her blessed. So things turn out good. You have to read the story to figure out how it all went down. Okay? Promise me you'll do that. That's your homework. Okay, so let's get back to the grace here. Okay? So the grace in this story is Ruth. Okay? The grace in this story is Ruth. Ruth ends up being something used by God in Naomi's life to bring her circumstances around. And I think, too, when we look into our own lives, we can see that God has done things all along the way. We just need to count them and recognize them, name them. Okay. Number 3. We need to find meaning, some meaning in our hopeless circumstances. You know, once you find some meaning in what's going on, you can get some traction. We can look at it from this perspective. You know, what is God perhaps trying to bring out in my life? What is He teaching me through these circumstances? My sister-in-law, Shelley, she had this quote on her fridge for a long time, and I memorized it. And it said, when God doesn't change our hurtful circumstances when we pray, it must be because He has something important to teach us. You know, hopeless circumstances are the fertile grounds for something. And if I check further into the Bible, I can look into Romans 5. And this is in verses 3 to 5, where it says, we should boast in our sufferings, like in our challenges. Because knowing that suffering, boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. And endurance produces character. And character produces hope. Boast in this passage means to rejoice, just to clarify, and it's to be glad about these things. And why should we? Why should we be glad about bad circumstances in our life? Well, let's go through that line. It means as you go through those circumstances, you're going to endure. And as you endure in those circumstances, you are going to change in your character. And as your character changes, hope emerges. That one's good food for thought after today. Because it's not just about, okay, just get through this bad time and it'll be fine. No, it's about some meaningful development in your life, in your character. And that ultimately grows hope into your heart. Number 4, we're going to zoom out, okay? We're going to get a look at the big picture. And sometimes you can't do this until you've come significantly through some circumstances and see what's going on. But I'm going to show you what happened in the life of Naomi and Ruth. There's a quote by Larry Crabb that says, our shattered dreams, our hopes, are never random. They're always pieces in a larger puzzle, a chapter in a larger story. As the story of Ruth developed, that pledge that Ruth gives to Naomi way back when they're leaving for Israel is so much more than meets the eye. That is the pledge of a foreign woman saying, your God will be my God. Okay, she didn't know God in Moabite, or maybe she only heard about him. But Naomi sold her on him. She wanted to be a part of him. She says, your God will be my God. Ruth became a believer in God. And that was because of Naomi being involved in her in the land of Moab. And then, if you look at another situation going on there, okay, Ruth marries like Boaz, and they have this child who's named Obed. Well, Obed happens to be this person that's in the genealogy of Christ, and not everybody can say that they're in that genealogy. It's kind of special. Had Naomi got stuck in Moab, she never would have come back to Israel. She never would have been the nursemaid for Obed. There were some big things going on in this story. Really important things going on. But it's only much, much later does time reveal how meaningful her hopeless past. Remember that hopeless past? Count the things that happened in her life. Only much, much later do we see how important that path was. Your life can be part of God's story too. And if you choose to return to Him, become faithful to Him, just like Naomi, just like Ruth, they hang on and they're faithful with Him. Well, really neat things can happen in your life. And this story shows some of that. So get some hope by looking for meaning in the bigger picture and return to God. And the last thing that I'm going to share is that you got to make room for mystery. It was already alluded to by Janine earlier from Colossians, that there's mystery involved. There's a passage that says that God works in mysterious ways. And He brings change about in our lives, and we don't know why at the time. And if you look at the story of Ruth, like in her youth, Ruth had this plan. Okay, I'm going to get married, just like all the young women in that day, Jewish women. I'm going to get married. I'd like to be married to a man who's going to prosper and perhaps have some property. And I'd like to have 7 sons, because that was the big Jewish thing, is to have 7 sons for whatever reason. And we're going to have lots of kids. And that was kind of what she thought her life would be. But if you look what really happened, do you think she would have wished to be old, to be widowed, and then be a nursemaid to a child that isn't even really hers by blood? There's a huge shift in her life. Where she hoped she would be and where God led her was very different. But here's something to note. At the end of the book of Ruth, the women of Naomi's community called her blessed. And that word blessed means happy. She's happy to be widowed. She's happy to be a nursemaid. She's happy about that. Something, I guess, maybe happened in her character as she went through that path. While Naomi's hopes with her husband were shattered in Moab, another story emerged, a bigger story, a more blessed, happy story emerged. We have to be thankful that God does work in mysterious ways, because I think He has a desire that we will be very satisfied at the end of our lives. I'm going to close this morning with a passage. It's a very famous passage of hope from the book of Jeremiah.